Good morning, you guys. I hope everybody had a good night's sleep. I am on my way to my appointment. For those who tuned into me yesterday, y'all know what happened. So now I am on my way back. I got to go to a different office location. The other office that I usually go to is downtown Baltimore. This office I have to go over to Cockeysville. So I always explain to you guys, Baltimore is not as small as people think, and it is not as confined and concentrated as people think. So Cockeysville is part of Baltimore County, okay, which is something totally different. But it is identified as a local district called Cockeysville. And I'm on my way to that office location today so that they can do the imaging and then determine what I need to do next based on what the imaging is saying. Um, but I was explaining to people like all of Baltimore is not what people think. But people have a stereotype of what Baltimore is, right? Because it's just generic. Baltimore has a city, it has a county. On the city, it has a east, a west, and a south Baltimore, and in the county, there's an east and a west. And those local areas might be identified by another name, but if you place on the postal mail Baltimore, you don't even have to say Baltimore County or Baltimore City. If you just, hey Ty, how you doing, boo? If you say just Baltimore, it's gonna go there. It's gonna go there. You have Ellicott City. That's really Baltimore. You put Baltimore on the postal mail, it's gonna go to Ellicott City. You put Ellicott City, it's gonna go to the same address. It knows what to do because this area at one time, the whole entire area was just identified as Baltimore. And then, like I said, as redistricting stuff started to happen and all of that, and then they wanted to get more representative members because you see it happen in Virginia. You see what the Democrats are doing in Virginia in order to try to deal with the redistricting that the Republicans have been trying to do all over the country to switch the map into their favor. So this is a game that politicians play in order for them to try to get more representation so they can have more influence. Whether it's, hey, good morning, Tears, good morning, Ty, to get more influence. So I'm on my way to my appointment. I wanted to come talk to you guys though while I'm on my way to my appointment. My appointment is not to 9, and it says I'm gonna get there at 8:19. So I still got some time to talk to you guys even when I get there. So um I told you guys I have been listening to this reporting ever since this little child came up on the radar that she was missing, right? And so, and when I say this little child, I'm talking about Celeste, right? So once something with me, because I did the same thing with the Lloyd Vallow Daybell kids, right? I donated money to try to find those kids, like because there were so many web sleuths and people on the web who were using things like one guy, he used his helicopter to try to surveil different areas. It was people going out to talk to neighbors. A lot of times, people don't understand. A lot of times, the community helps a lot with these kind of investigations. The internet has its ups and downs, right? But there are some ways in which community and when I mean and not just your local community members that you live in the same community with, but in virtual spaces that they help to find things happen. And in that Lori Vallow Daybell Cult Mom case, it was a person from virtual space that got some information from the neighbor that helped to locate the remains on that Chad Daybell property. Um, but a lot of times what I would do, I will deep dive and look into a case, and then if they go missing for a while, I'll go and start looking at something else, and then I'll come back to it once they're located. So same thing happened with Lloyd Vallow Daybell. I knew all of the information I needed to know at the time, and then went back to it once they found the children's remains and more stuff started to uncover, right? So I knew that. Remember the other day when I was telling you guys that something sounded weird about the fact that they did not charge David with any type of child abuse, or at least yet, that they haven't charged him with any type of child sexual assault until from they only did it a year before her missing, and only from the time she turned 13 to when she turned 14 years old, right? The last missing person report with the police was April of 2024. That was the last missing person report that they found, right? Filed. But I knew I had heard that the police had been out to their house several times after that, and that there had been some sightings and some engagements of Celeste being at the family home even after that. And so I'm not suggesting that she did not go back and forth to that house in Hollywood Hills, or even that he had her at an apartment, but I don't think it was on a continuous basis. And the reason I don't think it's on a continuous basis is because of this. It was reported that the police had come to Celeste's family home 11 times from April of 2024 till April of 2025. That means up to the month of her suspected death, the police had been out. So I posted on my community wall something, and I wanted to come on it and kind of explain it for those people who might not know or might have never even had any type of experience or been close in proximity to this type of experience of what happens with a runaway teen, right? Ty, you said I found it strange that they didn't arrest him after finding her body in that trunk. I did a video last night. I think it might be something more to that, because I think so. On my channel, I've been talking about David referring to himself as a borderline nihilist, and I was talking about these nihilistic extremist groups that are growing online, and that they are heavily under the FBI radar because they are committing acts of terror online with minors and vulnerable adults, right? And there have been over 250 arrests associated with this type of crime. And I was explaining that, like, the language of some of these charges, they're being charged with RICOs because they are creating these online networks. And the language in some of these charges are like the craziest shit I ever heard. It sounds like some anarchy, like type of movement or something, right? Like, one of the languages on one of the boys' charges says something like trying to destroy civilization through manipulation and coercion of vulnerable people, including minors. Like, where have we heard language like that, right? Like, it's the weirdest language. Like I said, it sounds like some type of anarchy, but they are nihilists. They don't believe life has any meaning. They don't believe that knowledge is necessary. They don't therefore see any value in morals, right? So this is how they proceed, and so they create this gore content. And the way and manner in which Celeste was unalived, it sounds and is similar along the lines of some of the gore content that they are creating. And most of these perpetrators are not over the age of 21. So far, all of the ones that I have looked at, I've only seen one that was 27 years old. The rest of them are closer to 21 and under, right? The majority of they call themselves edge lords, right? I said underlords because I'm familiar with another group at another age genre that's what they would have called themselves. But they refer to themselves as edge lords, meaning that they start out with one group, they are groomed by somebody, and then eventually they create their own networks and groups, right? So you said people dismembering bodies, right? And listen, when I on my live the other day, I was explaining that Joe Scott Morgan from the podcast Body Bags, he's always on Nancy Grace, but he is everywhere. He is like the top premier expert in all of these things. He said that there has been, like, because this is his content, so this is what he talks about on Body Bags, is autopsies, deaths, things of that nature. He teaches these classes, right? Can you guys hear me? Let me know if you guys can hear me okay, because I don't see my thing pulsing at all. So since this is his content, he was saying that he has seen an increase in these dismemberment cases, right? Okay, good, Tiz, okay. So he said that they have seen a huge uptick in these dismemberment cases. Like, it's been a lot. And I'm wondering if there is some association to the FBI listing these non-listed extremist groups. We'll call them terrorist groups, but they have them under DOJ. They are listed as nihilistic extremist groups. I'm wondering if there is some correlation between the number of dismemberments, because this is content. Like, and I know it sounds crazy, but this is content. This is why the language says destruction of civilization, because these children are mobilizing other kids virtually to commit crime, right? And they're doing it all for the sake of content that is sold on these special sites. And this is why people do not understand all of the reason, and they think, oh, it's just some porn, or oh, it's just some child porn, and why is it a big deal, and oh, why did they have to give somebody that many years for that? They didn't kill anybody. Because a lot of this content leads to death. A lot of this content leads to death. This is why they know to take it serious. They know what's happening. It is child exploitation. It is AIDS and human trafficking and sex trafficking. And it puts these children and vulnerable people, whether they are young adults or not, in positions of death. You said right, and I guess that's how he's making $300K a month, because his music wasn't that good. Well, this is the thing. Tears, his music is popular amongst those gamers, that gamer network. And they're into that kind of music and into that type of stuff, y'all, because this is the type of groups, extremist groups, that they are forming online. So it's consistent with the tone that is being set in these chat rooms on Discord, and where these kids are meeting and playing Discord and Twitch and all of these places that these kids are meeting and call themselves gaming. It's gaming in virtual reality, but they are also gaming and doing gaming with real people's lives, right? Like, with this stuff that they're doing, the type of content that they are finding. David is not the first one that's been arrested, that's been associated or has some kind of association with a nihilistic terroristic group, that they found CSAM, an abundance of CSAM. And that CSAM, it is probably it was probably not just your traditional intimate interactions. It is gore. It is torture. It is BDSM. It is masochism. It is all of that kind of stuff. To minors. Torture up to the point of probably some deaths occurring. Like, this is the content. I know, Tiz, I never heard of him until, right, this is the thing. I never heard of him, but I knew a couple of young kids who know, because I know a lot of young kids who game. My daughter is a gamer. Hey, Michelle. Exactly, y'all. Exactly. That's what I'm saying, Tiz. I think that the reason that the arrest could have been delayed is because there may be some other arrest that may happen. The other arrest that may happen may not even be associated with the murder, but it may have something more to do with the networks that are being created in these virtual spaces. And so, yeah, our age group, we don't know anything about this boy. We know nothing about why he's famous. But he made it big, just like Soulja Boy took off real quick on the internet when he did that as an independent artist. This boy did the same thing, but he did it through gaming and in those virtual spaces, gaming and streaming, right? And so he's very wealthy, very, very lucrative. But you're right, and Tiz, we talked about this the other day. There may be also another source of revenue being generated through these underground markets that appeal to this type of gore content. That is a strong possibility, right? So, but I knew that, I was like, this girl had been home. Like, because when everybody keeps saying that the mom, like, why didn't they report her missing? Why weren't they more aggressive about going to go get her? Asking all of these different questions. I was like, there is something that did not make me dive so deep into that part of the story of her parents. And y'all know, I pay attention to parents. Like, I pay attention to the parents' role in a crime, right? But it was something that made me not dive as deep, and it was because of these Bainfield clips that I posted today, right? Or segments, because it's a little bit more than a clip, I think, because it's probably over 5 minutes. One of them might be under 5 minutes, but the other one I think is a little over 5 minutes. So these Bainfield, I think that her family is really trying to not be visible. And I think, Ty, it might have something to do with a lapse in immigration status. So they are from El Salvador. And I think this also may have had something to do with how aggressive they attempted to be in trying to locate her. But this is the issue. She wasn't missing the entire time. Celeste was not missing from April of 2024 all the way up into her death. She had been at the family home. I think she was in and out. And I think the reason why we only see that last missing that last missing child report in April of 2024 is because I think the family got some kind of advice not to report her found. So let me kind of like walk people through stuff. I had a church member who she was having issues with her daughter, where the daughter was leaving, coming back. And a lot of people, they say what they would do, right? But you don't never know what you would do until you're in a situation. And the reality is that these kids today got a whole lot more rights than we did back in the day, right? And if parents do certain things in order to try to contain their kids and keep their kids confined, the parents can then be arrested and brought up on charges. Now, there are some parents that in theory, they say, I don't care, I would do that. Well, we don't know that until you was actually placed in the scenario, right? We really can't gauge that until you're actually placed into the scenario. But there are some parents who are saying, I'm not going to jail for my kid. And especially if the parent has multiple children. But think about how even more intense that could be if you are an immigrant who may have a lapse in immigration status. And if something happens and you get spotted by the police and you get kicked out of this country and your kids end up left behind, like we saw some of these young people testifying on Federal Hill a couple of weeks ago, in the shadow hearing over in the House committee, they were these teens have been left in this country and their parents have been deported, right? And so these are some added anxiety. This is some added anxiety that may have had some impact on how aggressive the parents were at trying to contain her and make her stay home. But she was not gone that entire year. What I think we are going to find out is that she was in and out of the house, and the parents got some advice, whether it was from a social worker, whether it was from law enforcement or close family friend, some type of counselor or something, not to report her found. Because each time you have to make a missing person report on a runaway, you have to contact the police and let the police know that the minor has come back home, right? And then each time the child runs away, you have to do that. And so at some point, if the child becomes a habitual runaway, you might be advised to not report them found. Because in the event that the child does something destructive while they are out of your custody, you are responsible as the parent. But if the child does it and you've reported them missing, it lowers your liability of what could happen. So that's one of the reasons why law enforcement and some counselors and other people who have had experience with this may have advised the parents not to report her found. And then the other thing that people will ask is, okay, well, how did the police get called out 11 times? And while in that year of leading up to her death, right? And they not document that she was found. Well, it's because unless the parents say to them, she was a runaway and now she's come back, they're just coming and making an incident report if they're not making an arrest. So that particular police officer that shows up may have no clue or indication that this child is a runaway. They might just know that a disturbance was taking place at the residence and they will call out for the disturbance. So 10 of the times that they came out between April of 2024 and April of 2025, 10 of those times, it was due to a minor crime investigation. That's what it was listed. And then it was one time when it was only listed as a suspicious circumstance. So I'm thinking, right? And you guys let me know what you think. But I'm thinking that she was in and out of the home. It is the reason why when this murder is listed lay in the wake, this was not her home. She wasn't living with David in Hollywood Hills and with him that entire year, hadn't seen anyone, had been confined away from the parents. Like the other video that I posted was a Nest camera footage from when she was arguing with someone in the neighborhood who had done a prank on her. And that was from September of 2024. So she is actually cited on multiple occasions near the family home. I think they never reported her found after that last missing person report in April. And so then it was constantly reported that Celeste was mentioning to individuals, including this middle school ex-boyfriend that she had, that her mother treated her bad, right? And we could take that for what it's worth. It could be that her mother really was treating her bad. Or can we translate that into adolescent terms? You said, yeah, I think she was in and out of the home. Right. Yeah, Ty. Yeah, like you said, oh, yeah, they said her sister identified her on some store camera. Right. She had been near the liquor store that's in the community where she frequented often. They had footage of her on that camera as well during the last, in between the time of the last missing person report and then up to her death. They had footage from that liquor store, right? So she was not, it wasn't like he had her isolated. It wasn't like he had her confined. I think it may be possible, yes, they probably got an apartment that was away from those Hollywood Hills that he may have been going with her to in order to be with her or spend time with her, because at that point his house probably became hot from when the parents made the report from before. So that Hollywood Hills house probably came hot, and they knew that that's where the police would come to find her. So yeah, the apartment would be a throw off, you know, in the interim. So I do think that that is probably the place that they may have been going to spend time. I think sometimes she might have been going to that home in the Hollywood Hills, but he may have been taking her somewhere else so that she could not be found or located. And maybe there was some alternative place to do that, right? But she was not missing that entire time. So everybody who is saying that, well, why would the parents not be more aggressive? Why weren't they sending somebody to his house every day? It makes it more difficult. I don't think Celeste was cooperative. I think that when they found her, when she was missing, when she ran away, when they would find her or locate her, or she would have these encounters with the police, that she was not cooperating and letting the police know what was really happening. And people don't have a realistic understanding of what happens when a runaway child report is made. Like, the main objective usually of law enforcement is just to locate the child and bring them back home, and that's really all that they really can do. It's not a whole lot more they can do, but there is something in this information that leads us to believe that there may have been some other investigation that they were looking into in relation to David prior to Celeste unaliving, and it may have started because of these runaways, because of these reports that her parents were making, right? And then they may have looked a little bit more, and they may have found that these other things were occurring. And this is why we see, and this is I think this is what we're going to find out when the evidence comes. This is why those special circumstances may be there when it says that he unalived a witness to a crime. Yes, she was also involved in the crime. She was one of the victims of the crime. But I think that them looking into him in relation to the crime that they were trying to prove he was committing with her and all of this runaway activity, I think they found some more things. And that this was the open investigation. Unaliving a person in an open investigation, that's a witness. and a victim potentially in an open investigation, right? I think that's what we get. You said, but what did they pick his friend up on? Okay, so Neo, I haven't talked about him much at all, Ty. They picked him up because Neo have some information about the actual crime, the disposing of the body, or they suspect that he had some information. Or maybe he has a plethora of knowledge about this virtual online activity that they wanted more information about. Maybe he knows nothing about the actual crimes. I find it hard to believe. I think it might be the actual crimes against Celeste, but it could be possible that they wanted him also to explain this online activity, this online network. That could be another reason why they picked up Neo. Also, I think they picked up another good friend of his. I think her name was Ayana or Anaya or something like that. They picked her up, and I think they probably the grand jury probably got some information from her as well. Now, so this grand jury information, right? So it was a lot of conversation over the grand jury information. Last night I was listening to Neek at night, right? And she was talking about this grand jury situation, and then Neek is under the belief that the prosecution's case is not as strong as they say, because she is under the impression that when prosecutor Silverman said that they didn't have, the grand jury had no indictment power. Nika's translating that, and she is under the impression that the grand jury did not find enough evidence to indict. That is not what the prosecutor meant or at least to my understanding, right? You said and 40 terabytes of CP shaker. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. I think the questioning of Neo, yes, was in relation to the crime committed against Celeste. But I also think, Ty, that he has more information about what is happening in these virtual spaces. And I think that's all. I think they wanted to get all that information from him, right? So Nika is, like I said, under the impression that when the prosecutor was saying that in the hearing yesterday, that these three convened grand juries did not find enough information to indict him. That is not what I understood her saying when I heard this piece, right? So let me tell y'all my understanding, and y'all tell me what y'all think. What I understood her saying is that 3 investigative grand juries were convened. She said, but none of them had the power to indict, meaning, in my impression, that they were not intent. The purpose of them convening those grand juries was not for them to hand down the indictment. That they only had investigative authority. But there are some content creators, in my opinion, I think, that are translating that wrong, and they are using that in order to say that they think that the prosecution's case is weak because they could not get 3 grand juries to indict. That is not what I took from what the prosecutor said yesterday. To my understanding, in California, I guess, they have the power to convene a grand jury for investigative purposes only. Now, I wasn't able to, because I was listening to it last night. I was listening to Neek and Knight's interpretation of it last night when I was falling asleep. And then I got up this morning to come to my appointment, to get ready and come to my appointment. So I haven't had a whole lot of time to look. But what I'm interpreting that to mean, right, is that they convene these grand juries only to go and sift through this evidence and come to some type of findings and conclusions that will assist them in their investigation. That they never convene these grand juries with the intentions for any of these grand juries to hand down an indictment. While some people are thinking that the prosecutors were not prepared. I happen to think that this was part of their preparation strategy. And the reason I say that is because I think this is just me, and this is just my thinking, right? I don't have any outside knowledge to confirm this. But I think that this prosecutor's office knew that David's defense team was going to take the approach that they are taking now, where they want the speedy trial. They want to accelerate things up. So I think that they knew that they had to have a certain amount of information under their belt so that they would be able to proceed and be able to be successful in the prosecution. I think they knew that. I think all of this stuff played into the delay. I think the delay was all part of the strategy. It's possible, and I do agree with some of the analysts, that the reason that the police may have had to move in quickly on the arrest is because maybe through the surveillance or some other outside knowledge, they got some information that he was a potential flight risk. We don't know, right? And so that might be why the police said to the prosecutor, look, we know you're trying to get this all together. We need to go ahead and hurry up and make the arrest, tie whatever ends y'all need to tie up in order for us to get this moving, right? That's just my opinion. I think it's just like the defense has a strategy about how they proceed. I think that all of these delays were part of the strategy because of what the prosecutor's office and the DA anticipated that his defense would do. Oh, you say, oh yeah, they fell right into their track. Right. I think this prosecutor, I think that's why this prosecutor is so confident. Because I think they anticipated that they could already tell. And this is the thing. So David's father, he's not a lawyer, right? But he has something to do where he is a participant in the litigation team, his job. He deals with like e-discovery, so like digital evidence, stuff like that. He has a lot of experience in this avenue. And so the advisement, David was getting top-notch advisement through this whole process. So I think that this was part of the prosecutor's strategy to make sure that they would be prepared to go in. And I think that they may have chose the route of them doing this preliminary hearing in order to get the indictment so that they could get enough information out to the public, because this is the thing. They know that the defense is going to try to use their influence with the public. So they have to come up with a strategy too to give some influence to the public. And I think that it is possible that they wanted the indictment to come out of this preliminary hearing so that the public could get access to some information that they might not have access to until the trial. All of this is just my opinion. I think this is prosecution strategy. I don't think none of this is by accident. None of this is rushed. None of this is sloppy work. I think this is all part of the prosecution playing the game that the defense likes to play. And I think that's why they are so confident in what they are doing. You said his family don't want to be they don't. And this is the thing. So I was explaining, like, they are a Christian family, like really strict Christian family. They took him out of school. They homeschooled him with a Christian curriculum. He wasn't able to listen to nothing but gospel music. Like, it's a 2-family household. Like I said, I know this is embarrassing for them. Like, I can only imagine how embarrassing this is. And he has a little sister. I know he has at least one little sister. I don't know if he has any more siblings, but I know he at least has one little sister. I know that all of this is absolutely embarrassing. You said, yes, the prosecutor definitely took their time, made sure they had everything in order. Exactly. I think that was all part of the strategy, because they could tell by the way that David's legal team was dealing with them, David's interactions with them, how the family structure was set up, the profession of the father, and what knowledge he has of the process. I think all of this that we are seeing was part of the strategy of the prosecution. I don't think any of this is a mistake. None of it. Now, we might later on down the line, we might find out I'm completely wrong. But I just think that this was all part of the prosecution strategy to move forward. So I I think that some of these content creators are misinterpreting what the prosecutor meant when she said that the grand juries, the 3 grand juries that convened, had no indictment power. They purposefully didn't. This is how I'm interpreting. They purposefully did not give these grand juries the power to indict. They were only convened for investigative purposes, and I think it was because of the voluminous amount of evidence that they had to go through, that they may have like convened and used these grand juries to help them to go through that information. That's what I'm interpreted as. Now, I could be wrong. And if I am, somebody who has more understanding of that, if they could please explain. But that's what I interpret it as. But I'm hearing some of the content creators, in my opinion, misinterpret what she meant, what the prosecutor meant when she said that. Some of them are interpreting it that they did not provide these grand juries with enough evidence, enough information to indict. And that is not how I interpreted her statements yesterday. So you guys, I'm here in my appointment. Let me go in so I can make sure that I am well checked in and do everything I need to do so that I could try to get this mess resolved, because I am just at my wits end and sick of this daggone kidney stone. So I'm going to go in, check in, and then I will check back in with you guys. Let me say, after finding her body, I couldn't understand they didn't drag his ass off tour and the rest of I think they wanted him to act as normal as possible. I think they wanted to give him every indication to feel like he wasn't a suspect, that they hadn't suspected a thing, because I think they had already profiled his personality, the cockiness. Despite the fact that we can look at this like on the other end and say how dumb they look, how stupid he looks, how many mistakes they made. So these people be thinking they smart. They think they getting, and the more you let them think they got away, the more emboldened they get. And then sometimes these people with this type of profile, they will get mad if somebody else starts to get credit for their crimes and start doing stuff to tell off on themselves. So, like I said, I think this was all part of the strategy. I don't think any of this was a mistake. You said, Tish, Dave, he has a brother. Okay, yeah, I didn't know. I knew he at least had a sister, because I knew that something that had to do with one of them shirts or something that he wore that had the blood on it in the tour had something to do with it being his sister's blood or something. I don't know if his sister had hurt herself or something like that, but it was some reports that one of the shirts that he had on tour, and I think he's sold it, or I don't know if they say he sold it or gave it away to somebody or something, but it had something to do with his sister's blood being on it. So, and I don't know if it was his sister injured herself or what, but I remember that back in the beginning of the information being released when her body was first found, that being said. So I knew he had a sister, but I wasn't sure if it was any more siblings outside of the sister. But I do know, like I said, his parents, he was homeschooled, very strict Christian household. The homeschool curriculum was a Christian homeschool curriculum. He was isolated from being able to have access to any other materials other than Christian doctrine. But he created this separate world, this separate space for himself on this virtual space. That's where he was able to become more adventurous and wander out more and explore this type of stuff that we are now seeing play out. You said it's supposed to be Celeste blood. That's his clothing. Well, I think I think at some point, yes, it might have had her blood on it, but I think the very first time it was something about his sister. I'm gonna see if I can find it. It was a report about his sister. I'm not saying he didn't. It was probably occasions where he did have other people's blood on some of their clothing. But I think the first time he did it had something to do with an injury that his sister got or something, and he wiped it. And then I don't know if they say he sold it or he gave it away or something. I don't know. But I'm gonna see if I can find it And then I'll post it on my timeline. You said, I wonder if they'll be able to use them crazy song lyrics of his. Yeah, they definitely going to use his song lyrics. Yes, they are going to attempt to. Now, listen, we know how that played out in a Young Thug situation, right? How them attorneys flipped that around, right? And how all that BS and hoopla about the lyrics and all that. This is just the culture and all of this other shit that they did. All that shit they played up, right? That them people believe, right? But they are doing it in the Julio Fulio situation too. Those prosecutors are using the lyrics in order to against that. They're going to be using it in the Little Dirt situation too, right? But the defense tries to counter that with the free speech argument and then discuss the culture, right? So I can imagine that is going to be one angle that the defense is going to try to come after. But DA Love said this, and I said this, I didn't even know that she had mentioned this in her opening statements. I have always said this: a black man's manifesto is their music lyrics. White boys create manifestos, right? In the Luigi Mangione situation, we see a manifesto. This is where they outline their plan to commit crime. Black boys who are serial killers, because often black men don't get labeled serial killers often, when they actually do fit the profile a lot of the time. But it gets overlooked because the standard profile of a serial killer is a white male. That's the standard profile. And so a lot of times, black men get overlooked for serial behavior because it gets explained away by something else, right? But we need to start paying attention and really, really examining the fact that a black man's manifesto is their rap and music lyrics. That is how they flirt with the public and flirt with law enforcement to outline their crimes. Right? And I'm waiting to see how this prosecutor is going to bring that in all together and put it in a bow. Right? I'm really waiting to see that. But yeah, you guys, let me get in here because I don't want to be late and then it be some mess. So let me get in here so I can get this taken care of. I'm gonna be checking back in with you guys again later today. Tears and Ty, thanks for coming in and having this conversation with me. And that's where we working this out together. We gonna piece this together so by the time the trial comes, it seems like we are just following our own transcript, right? Like to see if what we thought from the pieces that we did have end up getting tied together through the evidence that ends up being presented. Thank you, Ty, so much. I hope, listen, it's not even that I feel terrible. It's that this is annoying. It is so annoying. And then I am sore. Like, I do end up being sore and continuously having to use this heating pad to deal with it. But it's just the fact that it's annoying and I want them to get rid of it already. Like, I know that there's processes that have to happen because of the insurance company, but this is just too stupid. Like, they shouldn't make nobody deal with this long. I know they want people to pass it naturally because that's the best way for it to be done. But I need the option that says, blast this thing, do this procedure and blast this thing right now because my life don't have time for this. You know, I mean, that's what it's really about. My life does not have time for this BS. So you guys, I will talk to you guys soon. Y'all have a good day if I don't talk to you guys for the rest of the day, but I do anticipate that I probably will be talking with you guys again. Bye.